callers, and not necessarily those of the station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Welcome to Trentovision, where bad ideas get pulverized and the truth will set you free. Trentovision is hosted by Tom Trento. Tom can be reached at 561-319-5533 or Tom at trentovision.tv. Listen and watch every weekday from 3 to 6 p.m. on AM 1470 WNN and trentovision.tv. Now, let's get a peek at Tom's view of the world. Here's Tom Trento.
What are you laughing at, CJ?
I'm not saying.
You had your coffee this morning. Is that what happened?
No.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Trentovision. I am your host, J. Mark Campbell, today because I have killed Tom. I've buried his body in an undisclosed location under the water tower here in Deerfield Beach.
Undisclosed.
Well, it's the end of the world tomorrow, so I don't have to worry about being, found out or anything like that. So I can tell the world.
That's right. Wait a minute. Where's the party?
Yeah, well, we can't really say that.
We can't say that either?
We can't say that, no, because it's the end of the world. We want to keep to ourselves.
We do. Yeah. We don't want everybody there for the party.
We're selfish little piggies.
Oh, no.
No, I have not killed Tom. But I am renaming the show to Campbell Vision as we speak. and I'm looking for support from everybody here, so I'm actually going to double your salary. Well, I'm going to give you a salary. How about that? I'm going to be the Obama land, Campbell Vision land. Even though I can't afford it, I'll give you all a salary. How about that?
That sounds really good. So
anyway, we got a great show today. Tom will be in here in a little bit. He's running a little late. He had a doctor's appointment. But
he's okay.
But he's okay. He's alive and ticking.
Mark only tried to kill him. He doesn't really need to go to the doctor.
But
Yeah, but you got to get that last checkup of the year, with your insurance and everything. Before
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, we got a great show lined up for you today. We have Claire Lopez coming on in about 20 minutes. And she's going to scare the bejesus off of you.
Oh my gosh, I know. I heard her the other day, and I couldn't sleep.
Hey, after listening, we were on a conference call the other day, and she was going through all the stuff. I was like, at the end of the conversation, I was going.
At the end of the conversation, I was thinking, okay, we really do need to have an end of the world party.
And now she'll be talking about what's transpiring in Syria.
Yeah.
And the chemical weapons and the biological weapons and everything like that.
Oh my gosh.
It's actually a pretty scary scenario.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit about the biological weapons and chemical weapons. At first, give you a little bit of a primer on what's going on over there. And kind of get you caught up to speed of what the different things she'll be talking about. And I talked to you the other day about the VX gas.
Right.
And the detrimental effects on that.
Right.
And how it kills you in less than a minute. And it's a gruesome, gruesome death. And that's one Saddam Hussein launched on his own people.
Right.
And it was 30,000 Kurds, I believe it was.
Right.
It was a horrible, horrible situation.
Right. And really it's genocidal because whoever it doesn't kill, it kills off the future generations because it changes your whole DNA makeup and you pass it on to,
right? It's a nerve agent completely different than the biological weapons.
Yeah.
But you have a lot of, even doing the atropine, has an effect on your body because that's the agent for it. But it's still it's partially effective. It's not fully effective, but even atropine, makes your heart race, gets you all. That's what they give you
if you're having a heart attack.
Yeah. Well, actually, they give it for you as for the heart test. They fill you up full of atropine to make your body race, your heart race like you're running a marathon.
You've had a lot of those, haven't you?
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, if you go back and you look at the biological weapons and chemical weapons development, it was banned back in 1969 by Richard Nixon. Okay. Now, they didn't really ban it. Okay, they went out there and they said they're going to ban it.
Right.
But we just like we always do. We
stockpiled.
we stopped. The ban was for mass producing them. That didn't mean you can't make them. So what we did back after 1969, we developed a place called Fort Detrick. And in Fort Detrick, we started developing all these very nasty...
and where is Fort Detrick?
In Maryland. But that's since been shut down. But back during that time, it was the quintessential bioweapons producing factory, and that's where Bacillus anthracis was created. And Bacillus anthracis, if you know, is called anthrax. And now anybody can develop anthrax. You can develop actually at your home if you wanted to. But the key to anthrax is actually wiping off the spores and milling them down to a very fine powder, so they'll be aerosol borne, so they go deep in your lungs. Now that's the key to making, and so it's a very intense process. And back after 1969, there was a place in Russia called Stepnogorsk, which is in Kazakhstan, which is land of the Kazakhs. Stan means, like
land of, yeah.
Yeah, land of. Mm-hmm. And Kazakhstan was from the Kazakhs, mm-hmm. So they made it Kazakhstan, land of the Kazakhs.
Right.
Just like Afghanistan is land of the Afghans. Mm-hmm. So back during that time, they built huge amounts of anthrax, enough to kill the world 10 to 15 times over. Mm-hmm. And they started developing them, and they get larger and larger and larger and larger, and then Kazakhstan fell. And then all these people who made the anthrax
spores, the Soviet Union broke up.
Yeah, and they broke up, and so that big, huge weapons chemical factory,
right,
which was supposed to be hidden from the world, was all of a sudden now everybody could have access to it. To just walk in there and do it. But
so the Russians didn't just go in and take their stuff and take it back to somewhere in Russian territory. It was the scientists who said, "Oh, we don't get a paycheck now. Let's go sell some stuff
all these
on the open market. Let's see how this capitalism works."
Right. All these highly paid scientists are now highly unpaid scientists,
right,
in a very cold and barren environment looking for jobs.
Right.
So they started going out throughout the world. Now, in the meantime, back at Fort Detrick, they made the. Now, I'm just talking about this one particular anthrax. Mm-hmm. They started making the.
Well, let's identify ourselves a little bit, and then maybe when we get Claire on, before we get Claire on, we can do a little of this background.
Okay.
Like top of the hour, TrentoVision.tv.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead, CJ, take it over. Where are we and how are we doing this?
Okay, well, we are broadcasting to you live from BBC in beautiful downtown Boca Raton,
Beasley Broadcasting Company,
Florida, WNN. 1470 AM.
And how else can we get that, CJ?
We can get that on our internet at TrentoVision.tv, so you can watch us as well as listen to us. And if you are in your car, you can listen to us on 1470 AM. Or if you have a smartphone, you can download the iHeart app.
Yes, you can.
And listen to us at WWNN.
That's true.
Health and Wealth. And if you would like to call us and have any questions for us today while we tell you this horror story in the world, our number is 888-565-1470. If you have a question particularly for Mark and you want to ask him why he thinks he should be sitting in Tom's chair today
why
instead of me,
rule the world,
you can go ahead and call him and ask him that.
Okay, well, we'll bring Claire on in just a second, but I will give you a little bit more idea of how this material gets to where she's going to be talking about where it's going to Syria. And okay, the ruler of the real world is texting a message. The master of the universe
has sent us a text.
But before we put Claire on, let me give you a little more background history.
Okay, so we were back at Fort Detrick after the fall of the Soviet Union, and these chemical weapons plants from Kazakhstan are open. And
that's right. Now also, so we're still developing, Bacillus anthracis, and we're making some, really good headway on it.
Right.
So we're shaving the spores off, because normally if you just have anthrax in its unmilled form, it's almost the consistency of baby powder. Mm-hmm. Well, the problem with that is just like baby powder, it sticks and it clumps.
Right.
Well, that's great for baby bottoms, but it's not good for,
It's not good for mass distribution.
Mass distribution, that's correct. Well, what they did, they created a particularly deadly military strain of anthrax called, this is Bacillus anthracis. It was 1 trillion infectious spores or 1 million lethal doses per gram, which is 100,000 times deadlier than the deadliest, chem warfare agent.
Oh, gosh.
And so
I think I'm going to need a sleeping pill tonight.
Well, so what they did with this, the military, started pushing it out to the labs and everything like this to test it. And what we did, and it was Bacillus anthracis 11966 was what it was. So, to develop this, you either have to develop yourself, or you can steal it.
Right.
Or you can give it away, or you can buy it from somebody. So what do you think the U.S. did out of all those options when Iraq came knocking at the door?
I would like to say they stole it.
No.
They bought it.
No.
They did nothing.
They asked for it, and we gave it to them. Can you guys give us Bacillus anthracis 11966?
And we said okay.
Yeah, sure. Here you go.
Yeah, here you go.
At least they paid the postage for it, What's that?
We have a caller.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We'll catch up with you just 1 second.
Okay.
But but what we did was we simply gave it to the Iraqis.
And this was when?
This was back in what was the date on it? This is back in the early '80s, I think it was, and Saddam Hussein said, "Great," and started making.
And what was the rationale for that?
Because they asked for it.
And that was the Reagan administration policy, if somebody asks, go ahead and give it to them?
Yeah, because it's for scientific purposes. They said, hey, we were the Iraqi Technical Science Division, and we like Bacillus anthracis 11966 because we wanted to do some research on it. Oh, okay, here you go. That's exactly how they got it. And that's as insane as it is, okay, as the security was. They just simply gave it to them. And there's records showing the delivery date and everything else, and boom, they just sent it to them.
Oh, my gosh.
Can you believe that? That's how, insecure that these weapons were, back during this time.
See, that's why we go after Democrats and Republicans, because really we're all about national security, and we really go after stupidity more than anything else. So, I hate to be knocking the Reagan administration on stuff, but they, there were some fundamental errors going on back in the early 80s.
It was really crazy. And this order was 11966 was delivered to the Office of the Iraqi Technical and Sciences Division, ITSD.
All right. Well, let's hold on. Let's hold on Iraq and hear what Twizzler Dave has to say today.
Okay.
Hi, David. How are you?
Hi, CJ. I'm Mark. How did you know it was Twizzler Dave? Next time I come in, I'll bring in a
because the town was identified, and you're the only one I knew there. So I thought, if it wasn't you, then I would make a new friend in your neighborhood.
FYI, I just want to finish off this one thing here before we go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, the shipment was made from the American Type Cultural Collections, ATCC, located in Manassas, Virginia. The ATCC today is a nonprofit organization that provides a valuable resource for bacterial and viral samples for scientific study.
Oh my gosh. Are they still in business?
Today, this is back when I did this research is back in 2005, so I haven't checked it since then.
Oh, we should find out if they're still in business and what they're up to.
Yeah, no problem. So what's your question, Dave?
In fact, when you reach thousands of people with this 50,000 watt radio show, I would like to put up that subject for about just a few minutes and talk about the inaction on the part of our president and also our Secretary of State and State Department in general relative to the Marine being held in Mexico.
Ooh.
He's sitting in there since August. He went in.
Well, he's a gun runner. He's a gun runner, though.
Well, no, he declared it. He said he's still.
But he ran that .410 shotgun right across the border by handing it to the authorities and saying, I have it.
And documented it. Yeah.
That lethal .410 shotgun.
They locked his butt up, and and they have no desire right now to release him. Now, we have Secretary of State Hillary, who doesn't want to respond to the Benghazi. She has a Benghazi flu, I guess.
Yeah.
She's not going to respond.
The diplomatic flu.
The diplomatic flu.
Yeah.
Sure.
I believe she's even more dangerous than Barack Obama to this country.
I've always said so. Yeah.
Well, she's going to be our next president.
She's a princess of evil.
And she's our next president.
I don't know. She's so progressively to the left. It's just she said she didn't want to be remembered as a Democrat. She wants to be remembered as a Republican.
Already.
What the hell's going on?
Hey, no. Hey, we're trying to wait a minute. We're trying to have a conversation here.
It's Cablevision.
That looks like the doctor's chair.
Yeah, why don't you sit over there?
Yeah. Oh, I've been kicked out of the king's chair. Hold on.
Okay, we're gonna Dave. We're gonna move the furniture around for just a second here, and
God, I step out for a second
can't leave the room for a minute.
Man,
you take over your show.
I know, but
okay, the boss is back. We have to be straight now.
We're ready. I am. Thank you for keeping things going here. You told everybody that was.
We told everybody. Yeah. Well, actually, Mark told everybody that he killed you and buried you under the Deerfield
But I am happy
to
announce. I'm happy. I heard the whole thing.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
I'm happy to announce to the free world that my prostate is very good. Okay.
Okay. Now I said end of the year checkup. Okay, so I was a little more delicate about it.
Or for my New Jersey friends, my prostrate is fine. The prostrate is good. There's nothing wrong with the prostrate.
Well,
but it's good. And
David, are you glad you called in for this?
My doctor and I. Hang on. I'm telling you about my doctor and I. Every year we seem to be getting closer and closer. My doctor and I. I don't know how that works. Now these are good. Okay, David. Who's David?
We got Twizzler Dave on the line, and we're talking. Yeah, he wants to talk about what's going on with the Marine in Mexico. Has a comment.
Oh yeah. That's bad news.
Yeah.
David, I'm here. We're all here.
Hi, Tom. Welcome back, Tom. I just feel that not enough is being done to get this kid released. He didn't go in there on a shooting rampage. He went in, he registered, filled out the papers. Yes, it was a little longer than supposedly their laws allow. But he's sitting there, and Obama's going on his $4 million vacation. Hillary, who the hell, well, she's got that Benghazi flu, as I said. Nobody wants to step up to the plate and say, hey, you release this kid right now. He didn't commit any crimes. If they took care of their own country, we wouldn't have, 11 million of them over here. However,
that's another show we're going to do in the future.
That's another show we're going to do.
And nothing is being done to get this kid released. You see him in the picture, shackled to a bed in a rat-infested cell.
Yep.
And 10 miles from our border, and we don't do anything about it.
Well, here it got worse. It got worse in the last. Dave,
I'm sorry.
It got worse in the last 24 hours. 24 hours ago, Senator Bill Nelson was making statements that he is working with one of the diplomats from Mexico, and the guy's a great guy, according to Bill Nelson, and it looks very good that John Hammer will be home for Christmas. This was last night.
Bill Nelson.
Today, Bill Nelson. Yeah. Today, Ileana Ross Layton got a letter, a terse 2-page letter from the Mexicans that said, go to hell, go run your own country. You're flooding our country with guns, and we're gonna enforce our laws. And he's going to trial on the 17th of January. Leave us alone. So that's where Mexico stands right now. This is horrendous. Bill O'Reilly is on this, trying to get something done. We want Hillary or the president to pick up the phone, neither of whom have done that. And if they have done it, then
they're not saying.
Well, no.
Then the answer was no.
Yeah, if they have done it,
who the hell are they to tell us no on anything? That's what I want to know.
If they have made the call, it shows the impotence of this administration. And no, I got mine. I'm okay with this.
You know what we ought to do? We ought to send back every illegal Mexican. Just put them on a bus and ship them across the border and dump them off with a bottle of water and a snack bar and say, go let your government take care of you. We're enforcing our laws.
Yeah. Or
not with the incompetence we have in our White House, in our State Department. I believe Hillary Clinton, as I stated earlier, is more vile and vicious than anyone else in that White House. Biden, of course, we know he's a moron, but the fact of the matter is we have a government that doesn't really care about us. You talk about the fiscal cliff. You talk about they want to say raise it to $1 million. Boehner does it. He's a little weak, too, I think. And now they want something else. I would say, hey, you want the $1 million? We'll give it to you. As far as raising the debt ceiling, go to hell. You're not going to get your debt ceiling raised. Let everybody go with the fiscal cliff. It's in your court, Obama. Now, let him go on his $4 million vacation at our expense, while this kid sits in jail. Benghazi wasn't handled. What do we have in charge of our country? Nothing but incompetence.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask everybody this. Do you think if this kid weren't a Marine, that, let's say he was a registered Democrat, do you think he would still be in jail in Mexico, or do you think he'd be out? Let's chew on that.
I think you'd see them.
Yeah.
I think you'd see
because I bet he isn't.
No, he's probably listening. They didn't want the military to vote. Why? Because they vote Republican. Why? You have a weak president and a vice president and a secretary. By the way, and I'll get off the air. What has she accomplished in 4 years as Secretary of State? What has she accomplished? There's been more countries taken over by the Muslim Brotherhood, more violence. Everything is going Dixie, and she's the Secretary of State, bouncing around, smiling, getting fatter and fatter, looks horrendous, makes a terrible appearance of the Secretary of State of this country. And what has she accomplished? Will someone please tell me?
She beats Madeleine Albright by a country mile, let me tell you, man. Yeah. I said she, looks-wise, she beats Madeleine. Well, I guess they're both in. Anyway, we don't have attractive secretaries of state, except for Condoleezza Rice. She was very good.
Yeah, she was a babe,
Anyway,
I'll see you one day next week. I'll bring the Twizzlers.
You do that. And,
Merry Christmas.
People should realize that Dave is a retired Marine.
Yes.
So he's speaking not only intellectually, but he's speaking in terms of the brotherhood.
Yeah.
And it's very, very bad, the situation. Yeah. But the Mexicans are playing games. It's a slime bag country. It really is. That particular prison, CEDES, C-E-D-E-S, is run by the cartel. So what do you expect, you know? I think what we need is another...
do you think it's revenge for Fast and Furious?
Yes, it is, because that letter that was written today indicated that, alluded to that. Mm-hmm. We may need another Operation Neptune's Fork. That would be nice. You know, just fast rope in and pull the kid out somehow. But we'll see. In any event, it's Claire time, I think, isn't it?
Is my 15 minutes of fame over?
You did good. You guys did good. You did good. I know everything in the world now about anthrax, so just keep it away from me, whatever happens with that. But we have an amazing show. Claire is coming on. She'll probably be with us for most of the day. Claire Lopez, what's that? Claire is... Are we Skyping her?
No, we got her online.
Why not Skype?
She's calling in.
Oh.
She's having a problem Skyping.
Oh, Claire, are you there?
Hey, Tom. Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Claire.
I can do Skype I'm ready to do Skype if you want to.
Yeah, people want to see you talking.
Well, we got her picture up, though. That works.
Running with for it.
Actually, the phone is actually better.
Yeah.
Audio-wise.
Well, we'll see in the break. I'd rather have you. If you're going to be with us for 3 hours, I mean, it's going to be a little boring looking at a picture. So.
It's a nice picture, though.
I know it's a nice picture.
Yeah.
But we'll change that because unless the Skype is horrendous.
Okay. Well, we'll try it on the break, but we'll go with this for now.
Okay. The little piece we sent out, Claire, was the Middle East is exploding, and you are the person that has the answer to when it will explode and what that means, but more importantly, for the people listening and watching, how it impacts individuals in the United States of America. Because, you know, people aren't that concerned about the world outside of their borders. We want to show them that what's happening over there in this new fast-paced world impacts them. And then later on in the second hour, we have Ben Smith, the SEAL, the Navy SEAL, calling in too. So we'll get some on-the-ground information from him. He's got some interesting things for us. All right, Claire Lopez. What do we know about Claire? How can we introduce Claire?
Well, we know Claire is with the Center for Security Policy in Washington, D.C.
That's boring stuff.
That's boring stuff?
Mark and I know what she eats for breakfast.
That's right.
Okay.
Because
she eats jihadis for breakfast.
Jihadios. No, she eats cereal. She eats cereal because Mark and I lived with Claire.
You did?
I probably shouldn't be saying that, though, on the air.
Okay, well, I think your wife already knows.
Yes, if I had a wife.
If you had a wife.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
We've actually slept with her.
In the same. Yes. Claire has come on.
I'm so glad you're sitting over there.
Claire has come on operations. Claire has come on operations with the United West team.
Yeah.
And when we go, we rent a little house or something, and a bunch of us stay there, and that's our
kind of
base
like
of
a frat
operations.
house.
It's a frat house.
With Claire. It's a sorority frat house.
No, she is one of the guys.
But
she is mightier than the men.
She comes out typing on her computer, wolfing down her breakfast, doing 40 things at once.
Yes.
And we say, Claire, take it easy, relax. Oh, the world is going on. I got to do all these different things.
That's right. That's right. That's how they teach you in the CIA.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That CIA thing she did for a while.
Yeah, and, like 20-something years.
Marine.
Yeah. Went through the Marine stuff and has been all over the world.
Just to check it out.
Speaks 37 languages.
38.
Oh, come on.
38, yes. Pig Latin is her best. But what we're going to do today is we're going to do a pretty good dive into the philosophical, theocratic, geopolitical problems that are occurring, that are going to explode the Middle East, and that spillover is going to come right here.
Oh, I got a quick story to tell about Claire.
Okay.
I told it a little bit of it yesterday. We're going up on one of the operations, and some knucklehead, quasi-imam comes up and starts talking with Claire.
Where was this? Do you remember?
This is in California.
Okay.
And starts talking to him, talking to Claire about,
Oh, that's right.
About what the doctrine actually says in the original Farsi and everything like that. And Claire starts rattling back to him in Farsi. And the language is, well, no, I've actually...
It's good to know. Hey, speaking of that, tomorrow, we have a fascinating guy tomorrow, IQ Al-Rassooli. Do you know him, Claire? IQ Al-Rassooli?
No, I don't.
He knows you. He's an Iraqi. He's an Iraqi who was raised as a secularist, and he is one of the leading critics of the system of Islam. He has a $1 million bet. He does $100,000 bets. He has 10 of them out for people to find different things in the Quran that the Islam has based their system on. And he is calling in not from America. He's somewhere. It's not his real name, IQ Al-Rassooli, but Unveiling Islam. He wrote the 3-volume set, Unveiling Islam. He'll be on tomorrow, first hour. And I had a little talk with him earlier,
right.
And we're talking about when we debate the imams, they say, well, you don't know classic Arabic, right?
Right.
And he does, but he also said, neither do 1.2 million of the 1.3 million Muslims. They don't know it either. But in any event, Claire, let's dive into the Middle East right now. In your estimation, as a former CIA operations officer, as a national security expert, Center for Security Policy, all of that, what is the...
Let's take the tour.
Yeah, what is the primary problem, and what do we do about it?
Okay, well, tomorrow's show sounds very interesting. Just really quickly, what's important, of course, is not what's in the Quran. That's not what matters. What matters is it in the Sharia? Is it in the law?
Yeah.
So that's where you got to nail them. It doesn't matter what's in the Quran all by itself, in and of itself. What matters is it in the Sharia? So that's the question always to ask.
Yep.
Where do I start after that introduction?
Yeah.
Okay, let me begin just to clarify a couple of things. The United States, as well as the then Soviet Union, People's Republic of China, and other places had offensive biological and chemical weapons programs dating back to the beginning of the 20th century at the minimum. Obviously, we know that chemical gas, in particular mustard gas, was used in World War I. But the U.S. program really took off, and so did the Soviet Union's after World War II. And we and they both maintained an offensive program until 1972, which is the date when the Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention was signed. At that point, 1972, and entered into force and ratified by 75. At that point, the United States completely halted all offensive biological weapons agent development, and they actually began destroying stocks. Whatever stocks they had on hand were destroyed. Fort Detrick became the repository, as Mark mentioned, for the defensive efforts that continue to this day. In other words, researching vaccines and countermeasures against the use of biological weapons and toxins. So the U.S. did not have any more offensive weaponized stocks of anthrax, plague, Venezuelan equine encephalitis, whatever you want to talk about, after that date or after the destruction. So when there's the accusation, of course, that we gave this stuff to Iraq. No, we didn't, because we didn't have it.
We didn't give them the whole biological stockpile. We gave them samples.
That's disinformation, actually.
Let her finish, and then we'll see what you have, because she sent me a note here.
It's disinformation. The Iraqis got their know-how, a lot of their know-how, a lot of their recipes, if you will, from the Soviet Union. That's where they got them from, not us, not the United States. The United States was no longer in the business of offensive biological weapons after the mid-1970s.
So I just want to clarify this, because I was looking at documentation and actually shipping notices and the documentation sent over. So was that just a disinformation campaign that came out? That's what it was? Okay, totally. Well then I stand corrected. And
the U.S. No, we did not do that.
Well, we were better about that, at least.
We were very concerned about the continuation of these kinds of programs by other states.
Right.
Now, Russia being one of those, and Russia also signed and ratified the Biological and Toxins Weapon Convention in 1972, and then ratified it by 75. Iraq signed the same convention in 1972, but they didn't ratify it, by the way, until 1991.
Okay.
So that's a little bit significant there, the spread in the dates. Let's look at Syria. We'll just take a couple of these.
But there was the Stepnogor, so they did mass produce them.
I'll get to the Soviet program, but just to finish this up, Syria signed.
Mark sits in my seat and he takes over the whole world now. It's amazing. God, this seat, CJ, you're not allowed to sit in this seat. She'll take over the universe. All right, go ahead, Claire. We're with you.
Yeah, just the last country here. Syria signed Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention in 72, but they have never ratified it. So these are the countries that I'll talk about. But back to the Soviet Union, even though they had signed this and ratified this, they continued their program, an offensive program, not just a defensive program. And the United States proceeded, as I said, to destroy stocks and actually take down its previous programs and installations and facilities. And what happened is that we were actually inviting the Soviets over to witness our destruction of our own stocks and facilities, to let them see, yes, this stuff is being destroyed. Look, there it goes down the hopper. And we had delegations of Soviets coming over in the late 80s and early 1990s, 1991, to witness this, to actually take tours of places like Fort Detrick and show them our destruction procedures and the safety measures, too. We also wanted to share safety measures for guarding stocks that were going to be used for defensive purposes like vaccines. Well, on a couple of those tours, a couple of guys came over. One of them was named Kanyatin Alibekov. Kanyatin Alibekov shortened his name, thankfully for all of your listeners, to Ken. And he was a Kazakh. He's a Kazakh by birth. And he was the head of the vast, sprawling infrastructure called Biopreparat. I should say he was the deputy. And this is the civilian infrastructure that the Soviets built as a counterpart or as a nationwide program for their biological weapons program. It was managed and was directed by the KGB, of course, as everything is, but it was housed in laboratories and facilities and research labs and universities and civilian infrastructure. And it was some of these guys that we invited over. And so Ken comes over, and he actually witnesses destruction procedures in the U.S., or the fact that there were no more, the weeds were growing up around these facilities. And he was flat out shocked to the core of his being. He could not process this because, of course, the Soviet Union was telling all of their people that we were continuing our offensive program. And they'd all believed that even after signing the treaty, the convention, we had continued the program, just as they knew that they were continuing their program. And so when Ken saw that we were actually destroying it, he was flabbergasted, and he was shaken. He goes back to the Soviet Union, he gets his family, and they defect. They get out.
Oh.
This was the impetus for his defection.
Wow.
He comes out in about 1991 or 2, I think it was 92 maybe, and begins to spill.
Claire, hang on, Claire. While all this was going on, did the agency, Central Intelligence Agency, have operatives in the Soviet Union, well, 92, in Russia that were working this guy over?
I wouldn't know about that.
If you had to guess,
if you had to guess, were you eating your Wheaties in Kazakhstan?
What I would say is that the contact with Ken, the personal contact with Ken, was made in the United States when he came on his tour.
Okay.
And he was shocked. I mean, that's the only way to put it. He defects. He gets out safely with his family, comes to the States. Massive debriefing, as you can imagine, ensues. And he starts telling all about the Soviet program, which is still going on despite them being a signatory and ratified this convention. And he's talking about the things that Mark was talking about. The huge, enormous vats and tanks and stockpiles of weaponized biological weapons agents like anthrax, plague, smallpox. They were working with toxins. They were working with the hemorrhagic fevers like Marburg virus, Ebola virus. And they were also, one of the scariest things he talked about was at that time, it was just beginning, the genetic manipulation,
gene splicing,
laboratory manipulation at the molecular level of these agents, of these toxins, of these bacteria, and of these viruses, and something he called a chimera. And this is maybe the scariest of all. We know about a lot of this because he wrote a book, by the way. It's called Biohazard. Biohazard, Ken Alibek. And in the book, he describes this chimera, which is a genetically modified, laboratory-created chimera, a mix, in other words, a hybrid between smallpox and Ebola.
Oh.
Okay? So while Ebola is burning through the host victim, everybody thinks they're treating Ebola, and the smallpox is latent. It goes through like a 2-week latency period. And then everybody's exposed to smallpox, and they don't know it. Smallpox as well as Ebola are both infectious and contagious. So these are some of the things that we found out about the Soviet program. And the parallel to that then was just these years, 90, 91, 89, 90, 91. Of course, the whole communist system is coming undone. The Soviet Union breaks apart. The republics break free. Kazakhstan goes free. Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, all the rest go free. And what is left is a rump state called the Russian Federation. Well, a lot, as Mark mentioned this exactly, a lot of very, very highly trained, highly educated, highly skilled bioweaponeers are now without a job. They're without an income.
Bioweaponeers.
So what do? They go looking for a job.
Right.
And who wants to hire them? Desperately wants to hire them? All the rogues of the Middle East. And who has the money from the oil coming in to pay for them and pay their salaries and their, relocation and their settlement and their families and everything else. It's the rogue states of the Middle East. This is what Iraq did. It's what Iran did. It is what Syria did and other places. So let that be a backdrop to start with.
Well, I want to clear up an issue we had earlier with the Fort Detrick thing, because this is actually not this is a common misperception then, because where I got that information was from Judith Miller, who wrote a book called Biological Weapons and America's Secret War, where she says that in 1988, 3 months after the report was completed, 11 strains of germs, including 4 types of anthrax, were sent from Maryland to Iraq. The order was placed by the Ministry of Trade, Technical and Scientific Materials Division, the TSMID, which American intelligence officials had already identified as a front for Baghdad's purposes of germ warfare materials.
No, that doesn't even. Judith Miller is a highly respected.
Well, that's the reason I quote. That's the reason
I. She really is, but that doesn't sound remotely possible. I mean, Saddam Hussein was already in charge of Iraq by that point.
Well, that's what really surprised me.
That was the point. That's what was so surprising about it.
They just sent them to them, and they actually identified the strain, which was the 11966 that I was talking about.
Something's wrong with that.
Well, yeah, I'll send it to you.
But in any case,
yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
They did get it. I mean, one way or another, they got this stuff. Okay. They actually had it, and Iraq did develop a very extensive biological warfare capability, as well as a chemical warfare capability, and the beginning of a nuclear weapons program as well. They had all of those programs before the Gulf War of 1990. They had all of that.
Yeah, but the big key, though, like you're saying, though, is actually the Russian scientists that got hired and came over, from all these.
That's exactly right.
And that's the big key. I mean, they might have given them a single spore, but how to make that spore is actually the key, because of the technical shavings that you have to do to it. And that's the key.
The milling. The other thing they do is coat these things with silicone to make them not clump, as you said, and to be slippery, and in terms of aerosolized agents, which are breathed in to make sure they get deep down into the lungs horrid. The other place that the Soviet Union openly, well, I don't know how openly, but in fact, it's common knowledge now, it's documented in the open source world, sent both technology, know-how, and scientists and strains was North Korea. Now, as we all know, North Korea has a very close working relationship today with both Iran and Syria, and has worked very closely with them on their biological weapons programs, at the very least selling them. Of course, North Korea sells anything that's not nailed down for money, and they sold strains, but not just any old strains. These were, again, genetically modified, some of them even synthetically created in the laboratory, strains of battle strains, anthrax, plague, smallpox. And the reason this is important is that these kinds of strains, after they've been genetically manipulated, don't have the vaccines that the West has developed are not as efficacious against these kinds, or even they are impotent against these kinds of genetically modified strains. We don't have the formula. We don't have, the chemical compound molecular structure of these things, the way they were modified. And the way they were modified includes things to make them more contagious, more infectious, more persistent in the environment, let's say under hot sun or whatever the conditions may be.
Right.
More durable over time. Anthrax, for instance, the spores can survive in the soil for literally decades and decades and still be potent. So genetically modifying those kinds of things in ways that we Western scientists, the Western scientists, do not know specifically, and even broad-based vaccines, which are designed to work with a variety of different strains, wouldn't know exactly the little protein key, the little enzyme key that's been tweaked that would get it by the vaccine. So that's why that is so dangerous.
Hang on one second. CJ has a question for you. Let me put this all into context. At 47 minutes after 3 o'clock, WNN 1470, we're in Boca Raton. It's a beautiful day, and my trip from the doctor, which wasn't that far away, took twice as long because there's so many cars on the road. It's amazing.
There's so many cars on the road?
Mike, traffic report. So many. There's a lot.
You guys are doing a big up.
I got
Everyone's taking everyone else's jobs.
We are no. But we're getting hundreds of emails every day. We want more Invisible Mike's traffic reports.
More cowbell.
Yeah.
What am I talking about here? 47 minutes after Tom Trento, Trento Vision, CJ, J. Mark Campbell, Mike's here, Joe's in the booth. We have Claire Lopez. Retired CIA operations officer, currently doing a couple of things. She's with Center for Security Policy, Frank Gaffney's shop out of Washington, D.C., think tank on national security issues, the preeminent one in many respects. Frank and myself will be leading a tour to Israel in September, October.
Yeah.
Claire, we got to get you on that tour too again.
Oh, good. I'd love to.
Yeah. Claire came with us on the last trip. It was great. And then right now we're looking at the Middle East, and we're taking a deep look at these nasty agents, this chemical, biological stuff, right now the biological stuff, because Scud missiles are being fired around by Bashar Assad in Damascus, in these places, Scud missiles which can carry this crap. And the Israelis are saying the red line is approaching.
Yeah.
And just the other day, we want you to comment on this in a second, Claire. Just the other day, in southern Lebanon, there was a little explosion, and one of the Israeli generals said, if you sleep with missiles, they're going to explode sooner or later. You know, what do we know? So, CJ, you got a thought or question for Claire?
Well, I do. If you don't mind, it's more of a general national security, foreign policy question, because really a lot of what's happening now with what you're talking about in the Middle East goes back to the past of treaties that we engaged in. A lot of what the Obama administration wants to do, decreasing our nuclear weapons stockpile and having these new treaties with Russia to do that. What benefit is it really to the United States? What is the value of having treaties and conventions and signing them with dictatorships and rogue states, and then actually pretending that they're actually, just because they signed this piece of paper, that they're actually going to fulfill their part of the bargain?
Well, I mean, I see your point. I sure do. But the point of signing treaties like this and conventions, and both biological and chemical, and also nuclear, is first of all to put in place an international, a structure and an international supervisory body, at least a monitoring body, like for instance the International Atomic Energy Agency based in Vienna,
which is how useful
for nuclear. Well, it's been very useful in a number of cases. We're focused on the cases where it's not been successful. But for instance, let's look at places like Argentina and Brazil, which actually gave up their programs, as did South Africa. And the IAEA was very closely involved in all three of those places, monitoring the process of dismantling the programs those countries already had, and then in placing and installing, different safety and security measures, and providing monitors on a regular basis to monitor, and then provide a sense of achievement for those countries, recognition of what they've done, and inducement for others to follow in their pathway. Because the benefits, at least from the Argentinian, Brazilian, South African perspective, would be that once they comply with these various measures, they then become eligible for different sharing of technology that they would not otherwise have access to. For instance, they've given up their nuclear programs, but now they have access through the IAEA to all kinds of the latest technology for
civilian use.
Civilian use, electric power reactors and that sort of thing. So that's the benefit. And then of course, the monitors. You know, there were monitors, all over Iraq after the first Gulf War, and then certainly the 2003 aftermath. And a lot of information actually was obtained that way. It didn't stop Saddam Hussein from, running his programs, but it did slow him down. It inhibited him. And the other thing is that the reports coming out of, I'll go back again to the IAEA, reports coming out of there form the basis or form the justification for taking a country like Iran, let's say, currently, to the United Nations Security Council. And there in the Security Council, meaningful measures, or at least quasi-meaningful measures like sanctions are imposed. And that's how the sanctions on Iran got to be where they are today. Because the IAEA took the case to the Security Council and they began imposing ever tighter, ever more stringent sanctions. Not that I think that's actually stopped their program. It hasn't. I happen to think it's actually spurred them to accelerate it.
So it's kind of like setting international.
Hang on, CJ. We got to take a break here. You're going to be able to stay with us, right, Claire?
I will, sure.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
If you want to get in on the conversation with Claire Lopez and all of us, 888-565-1470. We're discussing the development of biological and chemical weapons as it relates to Syria and Israel and the United States. Serious stuff. But also there is right now a new commission that has been designated by the president to investigate guns in America. And who's heading that commission up? Do we know? Sheriff Joe Biden. Okay, well, we got a little piece. I heard this on Steve Kane this morning. Driving around, running errands, I had to call them up, and I was cracking up. I almost drove off the road. Joe Biden is the head of the commission to figure out how to ban guns in America.
Okay,
let's play this piece from 2008. Joe Biden speaking. Joe Biden speaking about Barack Obama and his desire for gun banning and all. This is the guy that's been selected to run the campaign to basically ban guns. Watch this. Listen to this.
I guarantee you, Barack Obama ain't taking my shotguns, so don't buy that malarkey. Don't buy that malarkey. They're gonna start peddling that to you. I got two. If he tries to fool my Beretta, he's got a problem.
Play that again, Mike. Did you get this? This is Joe Biden in 2008 during the presidential campaign telling Barack Obama to go to hell with his, restricting guns. And this is the guy selected to run the campaign to restrict guns. One more time, Mike.
Hold on.
You'll take us out on this. And here we go. Joe Biden, 2008. Your new gun czar.
Barack Obama ain't taking my shotguns, so don't buy that malarkey. Don't buy that malarkey. They're gonna start peddling that to you. I got two. If he tries to fool my Beretta, he's got a problem.
This is actually really great news.
These people, Joe, these people are crazy.